Okay, so I'm picking up exactly where we left off, except for the fact that I have sharpened my Prismacolor Ebony Jet Black Extra Smooth. I like this pencil a lot. Now, as I'm working with my softest, darkest graphite, this is probably the equivalent of like an 8B. It's really important that I have this piece of paper under my hand. One of the things about the soft graphite is it does tend to migrate kind of a lot. And sometimes it can almost feel a little bit like almost greasy. That's another thing that varies a lot in terms of different pencils. I found that some pencils are more powdery. So for instance, I might at some point use a graphite stick that I have that's Derwent, and it's so powdery it almost feels a little bit like charcoal. But this Jet Black Extra Smooth pencil is not very powdery at all. It definitely feels smooth in a way that feels almost, I don't know, a little bit, almost a little bit greasy, I think. Okay. So now I'm starting to build up some darker values, and I'm glad I'm doing the third step in this because I think it's important for you guys to see how much of a difference those darker values start to make. I'm even going a little bit around my circle just to define it. Now I can still go back to one of my harder graphite pencils and layer it in a little bit. But I'm going to stick with this one just for a few more minutes. Now, one of the things that I'll be showing you, maybe not on this drawing, but a future one, is how to use a tortillon, which is like a blending stump, and also a chamois. With this one, I think maybe I'll just let my pencil do the talking, and we'll see where we get with that. Now you'll notice as I'm shading this bottom section, I'm just going up and down, and that hatching motion really helps to define the plane. And gotta be careful up in here. Whenever I'm really defining a dark edge, I pay a lot of attention to its shape. Because those dark edges, once they're there, they don't want to go anywhere. But they're really important in terms of achieving a full range of value. Okay, so I'm actually going to go back to, let's see, I think I'm going to go to an HB pencil. Instead of my mechanical pencil, I'm just going to take this wooden pencil that I have, and just like my other ones, I've sharpened it into a longer edge. And I think at this point I'm going to get rid of my center line. Okay, there we go. And I'm just gonna start to take this slightly harder graphite and I'm gonna layer it over the softer graphite that I have underneath. Now, the advantage of that is that having that mid value will actually kind of link my shadow and my highlight area. And the other thing that it serves to do is it locks down some of the softer graphite so that it doesn't move around quite so much. You might even notice that it's making my softer graphite look even just a little bit darker. And part of the reason for that is because it's pushing it into the fibers of the paper. And it's also layering the graphite. Now I'm noticing as I go through this, I did not necessarily get quite dark enough down in this bottom area. I'm going to switch to my 2B. Because I think I want something just a little bit darker. And I'm going to go through and I'm going to even maybe exaggerate this edge. Now in my source image, one of the things I'm noticing is that I'm not getting a lot of contrast in this area. So that's an area that I think maybe I want to just slightly exaggerate. Whenever I have like a plane shift, that's a good time to really change the direction of my marks and also to enhance my contrast just slightly. Now, even though this is only a 2B, because I have a little bit of softer graphite from my ebony underneath, I'm still getting a pretty dark value out of it. Okay. So at this point, I'm going to go through and I'm going to slightly sharpen this up. And when I'm working on my contours, instead of having my pencil more flat, I hold it more upright, more like I'm writing. Now personally, I like my edges to be just a little bit soft and atmospheric. When I talk about atmospheric perspective, I think it'll be more clear why. But some people like their graphite drawings really sharp. It just depends. If I were to make this more sharp, what I would do is I would run an eraser along my edge, and I might even take a hard pencil like a 2H and just very sharply define that edge. I used to think that H pencils were not the most useful, but they actually are really good for creating like nice defined edges. Now I'm noticing, I'm just gonna make sure to define my contour a little bit. Okay. We are getting there. And because this is wood, I think I'm even gonna show like just a little bit of grain. Why not? And I'm gonna go just a little darker in my core shadow. Now it's interesting because even though there's reflected light on this side, into that reflected light, the shadow is also reflecting. So it goes pretty dark right in there. Oops. Now I'm not following my own instructions and having paper under my hand. So let's figure that out. And down here, I think we need to maybe make some adjustment. Okay, so now I'm going to work on this base just a little bit. There's some surface texture on this pawn. I am actually, I think, just going to delete that because I'm mostly just interested in the form. But if I wanted to, I could always go back later and add that in. And again, I'm just working with a 2B right now. Now I think my contour is actually a little bit dark through here. So I'm just going to take my eraser on its edge. And I'm just going to slightly soften that up. And I'm going to make sure that I'm reinforcing the edge of my circle a little bit as I do that, kind of cleaning up any stray marks. Looks like I have a little staining from my pencil, but that's okay. So I usually just use my eraser just to draw with, and I'll be talking about that technique in a future lesson. But I also will use it right at the end to just clean my form up. Even though I still want to leave this edge a little soft, like I said, I think keeping it a little more controlled is a good idea. So I think my final step is going to be to extend this shadow slightly, and I'm going to just do that as fast as I can. Now normally I would be doing this with a 4B because I find that 4Bs are just really good for getting like a nice, soft, even blend. But my 2B is cooperating fairly well. A 2B is going to leave more evidence of the direction of your strokes. Harder pencils do that, but it's going to smooth out pretty well as long as I keep my pencil like pretty horizontal, pretty close to the paper, and get like a pretty even fast pressure. Okay, we are in the home stretch. And this is the time to just go back one more time and make sure that I've adjusted all my values. I think I could still go a tiny bit darker through here. I'm just moving with the form. I'm going to soften the edge of my shadow, and I'm just going to extend the shadow out. There we go.